This is David Nevermind, and today's controversy is coming from yet another member, of the hip-hop community. Pablo, a new artist signed under Shy, and Justice Timberland out of PA, in a quest to gain the title, and bring North Carolina and Virginia to the front of the line. We're gonna stand by.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the Unemployable episode 2022, that's hard to believe. Happy Friday here, February 17th. And we got another great edition with Big Sean filling in for Nate Dogg. Nate Dogg's, I guess, is working again. But how we doing today, Sean?
Doing good. I also want to go ahead and give a happy birthday shout out to Mr. Michael Jordan.
Is it really?
Yeah, it is.
Hey, also, whose birthday is tomorrow?
Big Sean.
Big Sean, too. There, happy early birthday there. The big 3-5, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be shortly behind you here in a little over a month. But not too much going on in sports. I know we had Super Bowl a couple weeks ago. College football, kind of a down period after the recruiting. So we're going to look at all the impact players of 2017 and for Georgia, and also look at the SEC. Wanted to jump off right here. We'll talk about the most important QB. Jacob Eason will be returning for his sophomore year, and looks like there's some highs and lows. But Sean, just starting off, what were your thoughts of Jacob Eason starting out? I know he's a true freshman. A lot of people compare him to the other 5-star that came out of Georgia in 2006, Matt Stafford. But
sure.
I know you followed both of them really well. And what were your thoughts about, where he started at and, where he's going?
Well, I mean, I think the thing with Eason is that he came out, I guess midway through the first quarter, or perhaps early in the second quarter, in that UNC game, and just really kind of gave us, a shot in the arm with the passing game, especially vertically. North Carolina was, a ranked team coming in, as were we. And so I think, the thought was, man, this guy's just, watch out. I mean, it looks like this guy's just going to be, pretty much next Dan Marino. And then I think the issue, though, is because of, again, as we talked about, I think, in quite extensive detail, because of problems with his offensive line, as well as, problems with the running game and not really having a whole lot of receivers. He never seemed to particularly progress, I guess is what I would say. With that said, you still saw a lot, I guess, and before getting to that point, I think first and foremost, I don't know that you really could have asked a whole lot more from him, as a freshman quarterback. He didn't have, dominant All-American type stats by any means, but, he was a great game manager, never lost you any games, although you could argue, the Georgia Tech turnover was critical, which it was, but, again, there were other factors at play in that game. Played big against Tennessee, really should have led you to the come-from-behind victory there. Got you the come-from-behind victory on the road at Missouri, helped you win Kentucky, Auburn, games we were expected to lose. So there's a lot to like there. I think the issues, though, because of, really not having, much in the way of pass protection or much in the way of a running game is it seemed like he made some, long throws pretty well, but there were issues with, I think, ball placement with some underneath stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think the question that, people tend to ask, or they're asking, is, well, how good is he really? Truthfully, I think that's all stuff that's correctable. I probably would give him a B+, possibly an A-. B+ is probably the fairest grade, just because of the fact that I think you would have liked to have seen him do a little bit more with, his touch on some of the underneath stuff. And then also just for the fact that it didn't really seem like he had a game where he necessarily took over. And also the pick and tack, although, again, I think some of that was bad clock management the end by us. No doubt, he still kind of threw that pick, and it cost you the game. But I still feel like the sky's the limit for that guy. I think if you get him some tackles, if you get him a running game, if he's that good as a freshman, I'm just hard pressed to think that he's not going to continue to grow and progress.
Yeah, I agree. He started out really great. I mean, the Missouri game, we're just sky's the limit. I know we were 3-0, maybe playing above our heads because Georgia was an average team. But I guess I'm being hard on him. I felt like, kind of like with Stafford. Stafford started off terrible, really struggling. And he kind of like, you remember that Georgia game or Florida game that year, kind of came into his own, and then they beat, top 5 Auburn team. Kind of like he was really progressing. Felt like maybe Eason toward the end maybe was degressing. I just remember we were there. We watched the South Carolina game. He had like 29 yards passing. Could have been the win that game. He just really overthrew. They still got the win, but it was basically the running game. Dominated it. Kentucky was a good win. I mean, he didn't hurt anybody. Kind of a game manager in the Auburn game. He definitely had, spurts of greatness, but he's a true freshman at the end of the day. But next year is going to be a lot of focus on him, and he's also got this Jake Fromm kid who's an early enrollee, and he's working hard now, breathing down his neck, which is good. So I think it's going to kind of push him. They're talking with him on Dog Nation Daily this week about good competition. Last year he pretty much probably knew he was going to get the job. He knew he was going to beat out Lambert. I mean, he probably noticed that being out there to practice himself. But Randy McMichael, the old Georgia tight end, played for many years in the NFL, brought up a great point, said he tackled his receivers. Basically, he was kind of like throwing in there like a Brett Favre, just kind of gunslinger, just like a really hard ball. He's working on his touch, maybe footwork. And also they're bringing up, when you're getting hit every other play and you're not able to, place your feet and everything with a poor offensive line, that's going to cause problems. So maybe another year to work on things. Hopefully Chaney can coach him up and have more progress as a quarterback coach. But I'm excited for him next year. Go ahead.
Well, correct, and I think that it's almost like whereas with Stafford, as you said, I mean the first part of his freshman year was so bad where it looked like he was really just guessing at stuff. Mm-hmm. Then in that second half of that Florida game, he really kind of seems to start to piece it together. Auburn game, he just went out and dominated. Georgia Tech game, he won with that last-second touchdown come from behind victory. Then you follow that up with the Chick-fil-A bowl game where, we're down at halftime and then he leads us back to the second half win. It was almost like, going into the offseason, you just had so much positive momentum surrounding Stafford. Whereas I think with Eason, it was different. You had that, great start against, North Carolina. You had the great performance, versus at the end there versus both Tennessee and Missouri, and then you had some great game management performances. But then, like you said, you had some games where just, he didn't do much. And so people are, I think, kind of wondering, well, is this kind of the best this guy's ever going to be, or is he ever going to work through these issues? Truth be told, I had mentioned this to you before Eason ever got on campus. And I got bashed pretty heavily on 247 for saying so. When I watched Eason's high school film, one thing that really kind of worried me about him was that his footwork was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't think that's necessarily all that uncommon for high school kids either. But, probably you factor in the bad offensive line with that, still kind of developing and stuff like that. That's probably going to lead to some of those overthrows, like you said. That said, I still don't know how much more you can really ask. I mean, it's really hard to understate how bad our offensive line and running games were, and for that matter, how inept our passing game was, which was obviously kind of related to offensive line and running back problems, but or I should say running game problems, not running back problems. And so it's hard to imagine. You got the true freshman who's dealing with all of that and still manages to be an effective quarterback. you almost, I don't know if any other quarterback that I can think of could have really walked into that situation and done as well. And I would also kind of feel like, if he were at Bama last year, right?
Yeah.
If they had a freshman quarterback that did really well for them, I think Eason's probably putting up 4,000 yards, and just killing it. It's just, football's a team game. You got 10 other guys out there with you. And so if he did, if he still managed to do all that, problems he had, if these offensive linemen come in and, kind of solidify, give them some pass blocking and open up some running games for Chubb and Michelle and company, and, if these receivers come in and develop like we hope they will, there's the potential for him to put up some serious numbers next year.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to put Bama's offensive line and the weapons he had around him, and I'd take Lane Kiffin, of course, any day over Jim Chaney. He would have probably set up some different sets for him, safer passes, and he had he's got the better arm than Hurts. Yeah,
right. I mean, I'd agree. I'd take Kiffin over Chaney all day, every day, other than an eating contest.
Yeah, I'd take Chaney in the burger eating contest. But yeah, maybe possibly even maybe could have won that national title with Eason over Hurts. I know that's a complete other discussion, but let him throw it around a little more, run the ball more in that Clemson game. I mean, sky's the limit. But yeah, that's a good point. Looking at the SEC country, he's talking about overall quarterbacks for 2017. It's kind of an interesting list. I might have mentioned earlier. Where do you think Eason falls in the top 14, in your opinion? It's kind of an interesting list. I kind of agree with it.
Well, and I guess I need to kind of sit back and think about who else you have. So you're going to have a new quarterback in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, they've got them. They've got them 11th out of 14.
Right, you're going to have a new quarterback at Florida because Del Rio's hurt, correct?
That's correct.
South Carolina's got issues there.
They got that Bentley kid. Remember, he turned it on, and he's going to be the man going to the spring. Remember, he had a pretty good kind of second half of the year. Remember Jake Bentley? They got him. They're high on him.
And what about everybody like at Vanderbilt and also at Missouri? Are they returning their quarterbacks?
Yeah, Missouri's actually 8th on this list. You still remember that Drew Lock kid kind of lit up Georgia? He dropped off at the end of the year, started making a lot of picks, but he's got a really good arm. Maybe he doesn't have it between the ears, but he'll be back. I think he's a junior. Vanderbilt's going to have Kyle Schumer. Remember, he kind of did pretty good at the end. I think he had a good game against Tennessee. They still ended up 6-7. Got blasted in the bowl game.
Sure.
Yeah, they got Florida at 12th. You don't really know who your quarterback is going to be. Like I said, you got Luke Del Rio. You got Felipe Franks, who's highly recruited, who were both redshirted last year. Kyle Trask. On this list, who do you think's number one? It's kind of surprising who they got number one on this list. How do you think? Yes, and here's the hint: it's not Bama.
That's tough. I don't know.
It's actually, I guess he's like hell on wheels, but Jared Statham, that transfer from Baylor, they're really high on him. Auburn. They think Gus Malzahn, in his scheme, they're really high on him. It's gonna be a tough one for Georgia next year. We got to go to the Plains late in the year, so that's probably gonna be one of their toughest home games. Even though we beat them 9 out of 11, kind of owned Auburn. Number 2 is surprising too. I guess you kind of forget about him. They got Austin Allen. They got him as one of the most underappreciated seasons of any player in 2016. I guess he had a pretty good year. But he's coming back.
Tough to play big against Florida.
Yeah, seems like Belima though is not that. I don't know. What do you think about him? Seems like he's at 7-5, 8-4. I guess it's just hard coaching him up at Arkansas. The new Nick Saban.
Yeah, they were calling him there for one upset. Not really sold on him by any means. First of all, I didn't completely understand or get why you're leaving Wisconsin for Arkansas.
Yeah.
And I'm a through and through SEC man, but I'm also realistic and practical about the fact that there are Big Ten jobs that are going to be better than an SEC job. For instance, Mississippi State, to me, like, you could probably name, 7 Big Ten jobs, 8 probably that are going to be better than that position. And I think Arkansas is kind of the same thing, although it's probably slightly better.
Yeah.
To me, Wisconsin's a better job. I think it's got more prestige. You're on TV more. You're not getting overshadowed by, like, the Alabamas and the LSUs and the Floridas and the Georgias and the Tennessees. I mean, Arkansas is kind of an afterthought. That said, I still feel like it's a program that, historically has kind of has competed and been tough. And I felt like they were pretty tough when they had Houston Nutt there as coach. But, like, Belima, I don't know. I just don't get it. I just don't think he has it. I think he's somebody that's probably on borrowed time right now, to be completely honest.
Yeah, I guess it is Arkansas. I mean, what do you really expect from them? No, like 8-4, 9-3 program on a good year,
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Also, looking at this is kind of going back to recruiting. Talking about here's the 11 of the SEC 2017 Impact players. I believe these are going to be, first year on the team. These are also these can be transfer or new freshman recruits. I think the only Georgia guy on here, which I think's interesting, which I was kind of calling him a bust, but they're on here. They got Robert Beal, number 8 overall defensive end out of the class. They're talking about that Georgia finished 58th in nation in the Havoc rating, which is these are frontline starters, pressuring the quarterback. I think that's an interesting stat. We think about Beal. I think we talked about him last week. Think he's kind of under the radar good. Robert Beal. Did you watch any film on him? I watched a little bit. What do you think about him?
I thought his film was pretty good. I think, like you, though, he scares me in that, he had that great junior year, and then you didn't see anything as a senior. So the question is, why? Was it injury related? Is it, what's the reason? Why was his head just, or his heart not football? Do you have stuff going on? I mean, what is it? I mean, it makes you wonder, was it just kind of a one-year wonder type thing, or can this guy really play? So, I don't, obviously we want him to pan out. We need him to pan out. It's big for Georgia if he does, but I just don't know. It's one of those ones where it worries me, though.
Yeah.
I also disagree with that statement that in terms of him being an impact player. In all probability, he's not going to be playing until his sophomore year anyway. I mean, unless if we have a lot of other injuries, I'm hard pressed to see him playing next year. I mean, I think we've kind of been through the list of guys that are playing, but you've got any number of, of those freshmen receivers that are obviously going to be playing. You're going to have, at least 2 new offensive tackle starters that are probably going to be freshmen and or JUCOs for Georgia. You're going to have 2 or 3 safeties that are probably going to be playing right away. So, the idea of Robert Beal, just especially when you consider returning depth, as well as, immediate need, perhaps another way to put that, I think he's probably near the bottom of the guys you'd expect to make an impact year one.
Yeah, I was looking on here. It looks like this just happened. Georgia picked up, looks like this is an additional offensive line coach for the staff. I guess one of these grad assistants, I guess. But his name's Will Pegler, former Idawama Community College. Supposedly they had a really good offense last year. I don't know if this is going to help, but supposedly they're saying this can only add help to the young players, and it mentions, you're getting DeMarcus Hayes, 5-star Isaiah Wilson, Andrew Thomas, Maturi Johnson, Demery, and 3-star Justin Schaefer. So hopefully that'll be added, coaching to the team.
Yeah, agreed.
It looks like he's moved around a little bit, but he's got coaching experience, I think, on different levels. So maybe he can be added. Any kind of new set of eyes. And probably mentioned last week, maybe besides Wilson, you're really impressed. You think Andrew Thomas probably start right away, right? So DeMarcus Hayes, Isaiah Wilson, probably Thomas might start right away. You're impressed with him, right?
Yeah, to me, like,
For offensive line?
obviously, yeah, you want, like, arm punch and stuff like that, but to me, like, a big part of the battle for a guy that's going to be a left tackle, especially if you're going to have that pro-style offense where you're doing, 5 to 7 step drops, as part of your playbook, you want a guy that's got quick feet off the snap, and to me, Thomas has that. And so, again, it's been a while since we've had a true left tackle. I think probably going back to Trenton Servant's last guy who probably would have translated to a left tackle at the pro level. And so I think Thomas, I think he gives you that. He's got great feet. I was concerned a little bit about his upper body strength, but again, he played really well at the U.S. Army All-American game. Was pretty dominant. So to me, that's just, you got a guy that can go out there and can pass protect. That's huge for Eason.
Yeah. Here's another interesting column that they brought up, rating first-year coaches, SEC coaches, year one, for new teams. I was going to see what you rate.
Okay.
I'll tell you, give me your rating, A through F, for it's three guys, what you know about them, and then I'll tell you what they rated them. Number 1 is Will Muschamp. Number 2, Kirby Smart. Number 3 is Barry Odom from Missouri. You can tell me what you thought about those guys.
So you want me?
Yeah, just go with maybe Muschamp first.
Yeah, I'd give him a D.
Whoa, D as in dog?
Yeah, as
Okay.
dog.
I mean, they were 6 and 7, but yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. But the thing is, the East was absolutely terrible. It looked to me like what you're really looking for is a guy that's on his second rendezvous as a head coach, right? Is have they really learned what prevented them from being more successful at the last job, right? Because even if some of it was beyond your control, like injury, suspension, probation that happened, before you were ever there, but you had to suffer through, there's always going to be things with anything that you can do better. To me, Muschamp's problem with Florida was his offense, and that he kind of wanted to play this grounded-out ball control stuff and just rely on his defense. And it just wasn't really, and it just didn't work. I mean, if you got athletes, go out there and put some points on the board. Why are you in love with something like that, especially if you're not necessarily going to be successful? And pretty much what I saw at South Carolina was the Columbia version of what he did in Florida. Only he didn't necessarily have the athletes he did in Florida. Again, I understand he went like 6 and 7, 7 and 6, whatever it was. But the SEC East was really weak. Again, it's just, to me, you're looking for somebody who's really willing to open things up, expand, and kind of, give himself a chance to win. I didn't really see that out of him, and I guess, too, and I'm being kind of a bit presumptuous with things. To me, you just can't simply look at somebody like Muschamp and say, oh, well, he went 6 and 7. That's not like the worst record to run. You got to look at, does it look like he's changing things for the better, or does it look like this is just he's going to be there for 3 years and gone? And to me, it looks like it's going to be another 3 years and gone. I highly doubt he's going to be able to recruit the caliber of athlete because of Florida, or have the opportunity to recruit to Florida just from a brand recognition standpoint. The other thing, too, is that, again, the offense just still looks anemic, clueless. And so, again, I just don't really see that this working out for him. I guess moving on to Kirby, and, I might be a bit of a homer here, obviously being a Bulldog. I would give Kirby probably a B- to a B. And probably a B-. Things I like about Kirby were and we complained about this with Rick, that there were always, games against, big rivals for us where we just seemed to come out flat. We called it kind of the warm-up jog, where there wasn't really a lot of emotion, passion by the players. They were just kind of out there almost like they were for a scrimmage. To me, in every game, that was a big game for us against the rival. It seemed like our players were ready to play. They wanted to win. They were amped. And to me, that comes down to coaching, how well you can kind of get in your players' heads, how well you can motivate them, how well you can sell them on the importance of the game. I also felt like the defense took some steps forward. Not all of that necessarily, I guess. Some of that is obviously attributed to some of the things that Jeremy Pruitt did while he was in Athens in terms of, fixing up the secondary and, getting some additional depth on the defensive line. I do feel like as a whole, the defense was a little bit improved. When I kind of break down the difference between them, to me, Pruitt seemed to like to blitz a little bit more, maybe put more pressure on the quarterback. In years past for us, that came with the detriment of maybe stopping some of the running game. What I saw, it looked like we were more focused on being able to stop the run, almost, give them what they can get, but don't make it a big play. I like that aspect of it. I think Kirby did, by and large, a good job with how he handled the quarterback situation. When it seemed like Lambert, wasn't going to be able to get the deal done in Carolina, he didn't hesitate. He went ahead and put Eason in there. With all the offensive line issues and everything else going on, I thought like he did a good job of, keeping the team, interested, emotionally invested in it. That said, I do feel like there's some things that, he could have done better. To me, Jawan Briscoe starting at cornerback over DeAndre Baker was a bit of a whiff. And I don't necessarily know that it makes that much of a difference as far as the Ole Miss game goes, but, DeAndre Baker's clearly a player at cornerback, made some big plays for us, some game-changing plays for us, and really just kind of solidified the other half of that cornerback position opposite Malcolm Parrish. Briscoe got burned by everybody and anybody, and so, he's not even on the team anymore.
Yeah, I think he transferred. He's not even on the team anymore. He transferred, so I don't have to worry about him.
Yeah, so it kind of begs the question of why it took so long to put him out there. And again, it could have just been that Baker wasn't showing it. Camps wasn't necessarily showing a whole lot in practice early on, and so Kirby went with the guys that didn't practice that.
Yeah.
The other issue for me with Kirby is I think his game management skills. I think he struggled with. I think he's got to learn to transition from just being a coordinator and getting in this, battle of wills with, an opposing offense and being a game manager. I think his game management skills, in all honesty, lost that Georgia Tech game.
Yeah.
Just because, you have the turnover or whatever. You're playing a triple option team. You got 4 or 5 minutes left on the clock. In all probability, they're going to score. Or at least once they get to the 40-yard line, at that point, I think you say, hey, let's just go ahead, let them score, get the ball back, give our offense time to do something with it.
Do the Bill Belichick? Give them the Bill Belichick New England?
What's that?
Do the Bill Belichick New England, let them score, get the ball back?
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, Kirby technically comes off of that coaching tree because he comes from Saban, who came from Belichick.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, too, is in the bowl game where, you waste your, what technically would have been 2 challenges on really stupid, risky calls with the, the fumble or whatever it was, if it was, behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. Was it a forward pass? Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and, there were some other calls out there later in the game where, you really kind of want to reserve those challenges for. So to me, I think what you're looking for year two from Kirby is, all right, you got Mel Tucker, who seems like a pretty good DC. You got some athletes in there on offense. Can you kind of step it back a little bit, think big picture about the entire game, and then when you need to interject yourself at a particular moment in the game, are you able to do that? I think that's kind of one of the things that Saban's an absolute master about, and I think Belichick as well. Is, hey, we're not really doing something here. I don't like what I'm seeing. Let's switch it. And so I think for Kirby to be a success, he kind of has to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then good.
And then the Missouri coach,
Barry Odom.
I don't know. I guess I'll give him a C.
They're 4-8 though.
Oh, was he 7-4?
4-8.
He was 4-8. Then yeah, C or a D, right?
Yeah.
Again, you're.
Pinkel, remember he took over for Pinkel. He's a pretty good coach.
Yeah, Pinkel. I mean, he had an 8-4 every year. They were competitive.
Won the East twice, back to back.
Yeah, I mean they gave us that, it seems like you had some pretty good defensive players there, but you still managed to lose, to a really bad Georgia team from a come from behind touchdown against probably one of the worst offenses we've ever seen between the hedges.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's not particularly promising, I guess is what I would say. Probably about the same as Muschamp, and again.
All right. Well, that's those three. I'll tell you what they did. Hey, Sean, kind of a tough critic over here, but they give Will Muschamp a B, as in boy.
Oh, God.
Reason is that he inherited. Here's their reasons. They inherited a 3-9 team. He turned around to 6-7. He thinks he found him a good quarterback. Also, 2017 they had some 4-star recruits, so they had a pretty good top 20 recruiting class. So it looks like they're building towards the future. But I'm kind of with you. I kind of love seeing Will Muschamp over there on the other sideline. I think we're at 4-1 against him all time. So hey. If they want to keep him, more than welcome. We'll, the way Uncle Lou says, Will Muschamp's working for Georgia still. You know what I'm saying? So,
that's right.
So I'll take that. And then Kirby Smart, pretty close to what you said. They give him a B-/C+, which is about right. Saying great recruiting, but 8-5. So pretty similar to what you said. And then Barry Odom. Missouri D+. That's about right. You get 4-8. And you didn't have a top 50 recruiting class. It was another bad recruiting class. So here in the East, man. So I think we, they come to Athens this year. So maybe we'll put the whooping on them again. There's always that scare of Drew Lock. That kid can sling it around. He kind of gashed us, but maybe we should get him again. We'll move on to. Maybe some of the coaching rumors. Looks like Alabama's having some problems trying to find an OC. Sounds like Saban's being kind of hard to work with. So the rumor is Dan Werner, who's the old OC and quarterback coach for Ole Miss with Hugh Freeze. It looks like he's been with them since 2012. And I guess they had a disappointing 5-7. Also, it looks like the Rebels hired Phil Longo as the new offensive coordinator for Ole Miss. Any thoughts on that? It looks like they got Shea Patterson coming back. So he's what, 5-star? I think he was ranked higher than Eason.
It might have been. Yeah. I mean, to me, assuming that. What was his name? Warner?
Yeah.
Assuming Warner was the one that was calling the plays, I'm kind of a firm believer if you can't beat him, join him. And I remember that for past 3 years, it seemed like that Ole Miss offense has given Alabama his fifth. Mm-hmm. Even last year, a 5-7 Ole Miss team was just kind of dominating Alabama there for a while. And then,
out of 24-3.
I mean, Bama's defense, special teams kind of made some game-changing plays for him that got him back in the game, and eventually the momentum switched. Past 2 years, Alabama really didn't have an answer for him. You look at what Alabama's done. I mean, assuming this guy was calling the plays, the guy's shown that he can score some points. He knows how to put together a game plan. And if you look at what Alabama lost, both with Kiffin and then with Sarkisian, you're missing an offensive coordinator and a quarterback coach, and this guy can kind of step right in and do that. The other thing is I kind of like that what Alabama's got in terms of athletes with a guy like Warner. You kind of have a mobile quarterback similar to what they had with Chad Kelly. You got some athletes at wide receiver. Also, unlike what Ole Miss has ever had, you're actually going to have some running backs there as well. So, I mean, that's another thing, too, is the fact that he was able to put up points like that without much in the way of running game, essentially being one-dimensional, I think is it's interesting or exciting. I think that, again, assuming this guy was calling plays, I think could be a huge hire for Alabama.
Yeah.
And as far as I don't know anything about the new, Ole Miss's new offensive coordinator, where he's coming from. I think that Ole Miss is one of those jobs a lot of people don't seem to want to touch, both recruits and coaches with a 10-foot pole. I think Tunsil ended up kind of sinking their battleship, so to speak, with the stuff that he released when he got drafted with last year's draft about payments and things like that, and the tweets and the texts and everything else. I think that probably helped with us getting our defensive line coach as well. So I don't know anything about this guy. Obviously, though, he's going to have some good wide receivers at his disposal. He's got Shea Patterson, like you said, who was a great quarterback out of Louisiana, coming out of high school, played pretty well for them last year. So, I mean, talent, short balls really shouldn't kind of be an excuse. You're going to kind of have a good senior group coming back. You got a great offensive line as well. So, he's got to kind of come out and hit the ground running, I think. I think that's perfectly reasonable to expect as much.
Yeah, speaking of that, Ole Miss, Georgia took Trey Scott from last week as our defensive coordinator. Georgia's. Looks like yesterday they signed a guy named Freddie Roach, and we're not talking about the one that trains Pacquiao.
Roach is an old Alabama tight end, wasn't he? Or is that pretty?
Yeah, that's close. He's actually last year he was served as Alabama's director of player development with Bama.
Mm-hmm.
So he's picked up, and he Roach, who joined Crimson Tide staff in 2015 after 2 seasons as outside linebacker coach at South Alabama, was a four-year letterman as a linebacker at Bama. Also served as assistant at Murray State and East Mississippi Community College. So,
okay.
I guess that's a good pickup for him. But it looks like you mentioned, Ole Miss kind of got some cloud over there, little dark clouds, and they're having some attrition on their coaching staff too. I think they lost Chris Kiffin, who went to FAU, I guess, with Lane. He was the former defensive line coach. Looks like they've been through like 2 or 3 defensive line coaches. I mean, they had a 30. Speaking of that, ranked 30th in recruiting. They got a lot of problems there at Ole Miss.
Well, right. I think it was, I think it's the Tunsil effect, man. I think that, when you have a guy that's dumb enough to admit that, payments and things like that are going on.
He's just being honest.
Things where, well, he was. It's kind of what you get when you mess with somebody that's asking you to play below when they're asking you to pull.
Yeah.
Below the rules, and they kind of had you by the short hair, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of these recruits, I think a lot of recruits want to play. a factor for a lot of them is they want to have opportunity to play in, for championships and stuff.
Yeah.
And so if you've got the worry or concern of being on probation, that ain't happening.
Yeah. We'll look at the Georgia roster a little bit coming into the spring. They got an article on looks like the first and the second team. I'll throw these out at you, see what you think about them. For this is on defense. This is the first team coming in. I think this is including the early enrollees, so this is not any of the guys coming in. I think they come in June for the 2017 class. But defensive tackle, you're gonna they've got the early enrollees included on here too. So all right, so you got Trent Thompson, defensive tackle. Nose tackles John Atkins. Defensive ends Jonathan Ledbetter. Sam linebacker is Lorenzo Carter. Jack linebacker is Davin Bellamy. Mike is Natrez Patrick. Roquan Smith is the Will linebacker. Secondary is going to be DeAndre Baker. Malcolm Parrish. Star position, they got Tyreek McGee, but also they have backup is D'Angelo Gibbs. I guess you got to look at them. They have Aaron Davis and Dominique Sanders.
Okay.
You want to see what you thought about the backups? I'll go through those. All right. Backup to Thompson. Trent Thompson's Rochester. I agree with that. Daquan Hawkins-Munkle. Remember he was banged up at the end of the year. I think they said you could see against the rush that they were lacking at the end when he wasn't in there. I think he was a surprise. I think he was like a 3-star, kind of on the radar. Remember he had some tackles. Right. David Marshall, who we're both impressed with, is great backup. The Ledbetter when he's not in there. DeAndre Walker, back up to Carter. I think he's one of those on special teams. They say he's just like he's like an Energizer Bunny. Got to calm him down. I think he had a lot of late hits, kind of really intense. Chauncey Manick, I think they're high on him, but he didn't get to play that much. He was a freshman last year. Reggie Carter, he's been around the program for a while, kind of a lot of injuries. Jawan Taylor, Tyreek McGee is backing up Baker. Pat Allen. Is that a lineman? Is that a misprint? Isn't Pat Allen offensive lineman? Isn't Pat Allen offensive lineman? They got his name down. Isn't Pat Allen one of those offensive linemen? All right, maybe that's a misprint. D'Angelo Gibbs back up to start. Rashad Roundtree is backing up Aaron Davis, and then you got Richard LeCount as backing up Dominique Sanders. So we'll get your thoughts on that, or.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like on that defensive line, obviously it's always subject to fluctuation.
Yeah.
I would put Hawkins probably at starting nose tackle. I just think he was the most effective in the bunch.
Is Atkins a senior? Is that why he's in there? Maybe? It seems like he's been there a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely senior. He's part of that. He's one of the few that survived that 2013 recruiting class.
Yeah.
And all the attrition therewith. But, again, like you said, I mean, that we kind of noticed some issues stopping the run when Hawkins wasn't in there. So to me, that obviously would seem to indicate that we're a little more effective with him in there. I think he could probably start. I think that's one that could easily flip. I would think that David Marshall and Bellamy could easily switch as well. Obviously, or not Bellamy, but David Marshall and Ledbetter could switch. Ledbetter was, I think, very effective when he was in there. Obviously, he was suspended for, 4 or 5 games, something like that.
Yeah, 6 games.
6 games. So,
it's crazy. Yeah.
You don't necessarily have the complete body of work to judge him on. But, David Marshall was great. So I could easily see those two switching. I think Trent Thompson, obviously, he is where he is. He ain't going anywhere. And I guess for that matter, too, the other thing is Julian Rochester. I think he could easily come in, maybe in jumbo or big packages, and possibly take one of those, that starting position from either Ledbetter or David Marshall. I don't know.
It's good to have depth later in the game, so it's good to have another big body,
Right, exactly. And I don't know if schematically you like somebody like a Marshall or an Ledbetter who might be a little bit more of a pure pass rusher there, or a bit more of a tweener. And then, Clark and some of those other guys. I mean, again, I think that the nice thing about a defensive line depth is, you guys they're mostly sophomore and juniors, right?
Yep.
And the talent to go around. It seems like we've really got a nice, for the first time that I can remember in a while, a legitimate two-deep set where, all of those guys could really go in and probably play and contribute and together SEC programs.
Yeah, I think we even noticed, like, when we went to the games, they'd rotate a lot of guys in, and I think last year the strength and conditioning was a positive. I noticed the strength and conditioning coach. Did you ever notice there's some games, if it was a lot of plays, they might gas, but I felt like the strength and conditioning is pretty solid. Like, you didn't see them gas out a lot, which was good. So I think that's contributed to the strength and conditioning coach. I think he came from Central Florida. So that was good. Any of these guys, maybe on the defensive line, could come in. You think that Devontae Wyatt, they're on him, maybe he could get in that rotation, or would he probably be like third string behind maybe Thompson or Rochester? Think he'd come in right away, or he's probably just
pretty sure. I mean, I'd kind of be surprised if he does, just because of the fact that.
I think you always said it's kind of hard. It's a hard position to play.
Well, yeah, and when you consider the talent in front of them, it's not like we're basically what you have is an average to a below average defensive lineman, that's up there. You've got guys that are 4 and 5 stars that are developing and, are just, they're very effective players. So I think for this guy to come in and really contribute, it's going to be, because of one of the two reasons, either one of which, God forbid, is injuries, or the other one is just because he's the second coming of Warren Sapp or something like that. And, if he does, obviously we're excited, we're on cloud 9. I just don't know that's necessarily where he's at. I think he's somebody who, he's raw. He's got the talent, the ability, the potential, to develop and to contribute down the road. But, he's not plug and play ready yet from what they're saying. So, and again, people, the experts and, evaluators are wrong all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think that if you were going to, use them as any measure of reliability, though, it's, in all probability, him contributing this year probably isn't in the cards.
Yeah. Any of the linebackers you think could contribute right away coming in? A guy's name that they said, I guess he's an early enrollee, or they say he looks really good so far, is who's impressed in, spring drills or winter drills. They said Monty Rice is, really impressive. Remember, I think he said he was under the radar good, but they say he's looked good in warm-up so far.
Yeah, to me, he was somebody who, when we go back and look at the 2012 recruiting class where, we lost, 2011 was our quote-unquote dream team class. We brought in, Isaiah Crowell at running back, who, he just struggled with personal issues at the time. He ended up transferring. And, we got Keith Marshall, who was a 5-star out of Raleigh, North Carolina, and then a little bit under the radar guy by the name of Todd Gurley, who, we all ended up knowing how great he ended up being. I'm not saying Monty Rice is on that level, but I think that he's somebody who his playmaking ability pops out on film to me. And so I kind of see him as kind of being similar to, a Roquan Smith.
Yeah, Roquan Smith can be a beast.
The other thing, too, is at the inside linebacker spot, although we've got Natrez Patrick and, Roquan Smith, who are just both phenomenal inside linebackers, behind those guys, there's definitely, there's some depth issues there. And so there's room for, some young guys to come in and play. Jaleel Wiggins, who was a 4-star and a U.S. Army All-American last year, he was on campus. Kind of figured that he should be in the rotation, but, there's certainly immediate playing time available. And, Monty Rice, he's already on campus. He's banging pads. He's getting in there. And so, he's going to kind of have a leg up on some of these other freshmen.
How about Walter Grant, or how fast Nate McBride's going to be? How about these guys? I think they're not there till June, though.
Well, yeah, to me, Nate McBride is another one who's just got, he's fast. And he seems like he's a good tackler. He was one of those ones where I thought when you kind of read some of the recruiting boards, they were wondering how good he was really going to be, if it was just he was a bit overhyped. I think with all the rage and, if people are honest, despite all the PC talk about, concussions and things like that, one thing people have always loved about football is just a really great thud or a hit and somebody who can just knock the daylights out of an offensive player, right? Mm-hmm. And so, those types like the Reuben Fosters or the Raekwon McMillans at Ohio State that are just those thumpers.
Alec Ogletree, that's your boy.
Yeah, Alec Ogletree, Ray Lewis, the guys who just really thump you at the linebacker position are the ones that tend to get all the glory.
Yeah.
Nate McBride, I think, is more of, the twist and tackle you type where, he's not necessarily a thudder, but, he gets to you quickly, he wraps you up, he tackles you, and I think as long as, he's not tackling people 5-6 yards down the field or taking bad angles, as long as he's getting there, making an effective tackle, I mean, it is what it is. I don't care how he gets it done, as long as it's effective and he gets it done.
Hey, can we maybe compare him to like a Rennie Curran back in the day? Remember a lot of tackles, something like that, tackling machine?
Yeah, although I'll say I thought Rennie Curran, probably the same thing, although I think, he's bigger than Rennie. He might be a little bit faster. But yeah, I mean, he kind of in the same mold.
Hey, I remember that we had a debate years ago. Sean got a easy debate. He loved Alec Ogletree, but my thing with that, my negative against Alec Ogletree was, he was out I think a total of 12 or 13 games, either injury or suspension. And I was like, I'll take Rennie Curran, who's actually going to play and have a body in there each game, getting 10 or 12 tackles, than a guy that's, he was hell on wheels when he was in there, but you just couldn't depend on him because you don't know when he's going to be out on suspension or suspension or injury. And Sean always said, just watch his film, man. He's like a human, playmaker just when he's in there. But anyway, we had a debate about that one time. It was pretty funny.
Well, right, and that's actually one where we can kind of, we can digress and go on to memory lane a bit. When you look at Alec Ogletree,
and he's an All-Pro now currently, so I probably ate my words a little bit. He's great.
Well, right, but he came into Georgia at safety, and so his first year he was kind of, playing that safety position not very effectively. Sophomore year you had injury with broken foot that kept him out for I think roughly speaking half the games, and then junior year you had the suspension for the shooter helmet that kept him out for about half the game. So you're basically talking about a guy who, for all intents and purposes, played in maybe at the linebacker position 14 games at Georgia,
something like that,
give or take.
Yeah, he was there 3 years.
And his highlight film, from when they were drafting him, it's 8 minutes long.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't put together 8 minutes of film for, and you talk to some of the other linebackers from 2000 that played at Georgia. You talk about Tony Taylor, Rennie Curran's in there, even Thomas Davis, although maybe it's not as fair with Thomas Davis because
Boss Bailey maybe. Boss Bailey in there maybe, something like that. Boss Bailey.
Yeah, Boss Bailey. But, I think you're hard-pressed to find, you take Tony Taylor, Rennie Curran, and then maybe, any other, linebacker outside of maybe like a Boss Bailey or a Thomas Davis type. I don't know that you get 8 minutes between the three of them.
Yeah.
And, these were guys that played, 36 games probably. So the fact that you have a guy that, puts together 8 minutes in 14 games,
yeah.
He's making plays.
Picking up and slamming people like Georgia Tech dude that time. Power bombs, slams, suplex. Yeah, like I said, he was fun when he was in there. Kind of reminds me of Gurley, man. Gurley, great as a pro. He's probably top 5 all time. But, injuries and suspensions. It's kind of sad. I feel like we don't get the goodie while they're on campus. If they're great, you're only going to get them 3 years, and if they're like hurt or suspended, you're just not getting the full potential. I know it's frustrating, but it is what it is.
Well, and you look at it too.
AJ Green
right.
too.
Absolutely. Part of our problem, I think, with running backs and injuries, beyond just being in position, has been our offensive line in the past. I think we've had some great running backs who managed to do some great things in spite of their offensive line. That said, sooner or later, having guys that aren't all that effective is going to make an impact, and it's going to be with injuries at the knees and other places for those running backs. You look at Alabama's running backs; you don't really see them getting injured all that much. And so, to me, the difference comes down to that offensive line and how effectively they block.
Yeah, we're actually, as bad as an offensive lineman we're actually pretty lucky this year with not a lot of injuries, knock on wood, to Georgia at running back. We're actually pretty healthy at running back last year, which was odd because it seems like we usually have at least one guy blow a knee out.
No, that's right.
And I will say this, we are heading to, might need to hold our breath, we are heading to Knoxville this year, a.k.a. Knee Fest in the last couple of years, so we got to hold our breath that game for any of our running backs. Even though we're pretty loaded there, though, so. God forbid anybody blowing a knee out.
Well, that's right, and obviously, it's going to be a tough one. It always is with Tennessee. They've won the last two. That's one that would kind of be nice to win. Obviously speaking, you want to avoid injuries as well. I'll tell you that it'll be interesting in terms of what happens with Tennessee. Barring some type of just surprise season, I kind of see Tennessee maybe going 6-6, 6-7, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely don't see them winning the East. And it would seem like at that point that the Butch Jones is probably done and it's going to be let go. It'll be interesting to see who Tennessee would pick up.
Yeah, I agree.
You wonder if it's going to be somebody like Chip Kelly or
Brian Kelly.
Yeah, maybe Brian Kelly, although, that's another one where you wonder if that's, I know he's at Notre Dame and there's higher, there's, academic restrictions that you don't necessarily have in some of the other programs, but, you don't necessarily have, the toughest schedule per se either. You play some tough teams, but it's not like it's, just a gauntlet year in, year out, and you've obviously had some struggles with your defense and having a sustained running game if he can make it there. But yeah, he might be one that gets the call.
Yeah, I just think that'd be interesting, kind of like mid-tier coaching hire. Speaking of that, what did you think about, I think he's the best player, the best defensive player for LSU, Arden Key. Says he's taken away some time from being away from the program to step away. What did you hear anything about that? Arden Key, I guess, I don't know if he's gotten in a little trouble or he's not with the team anymore. He's probably I think he's the best defender last year. That's kind of surprising.
So, in other words, is he not going to play next year?
For some reason, it says as of right now, he's taking some time away from the program. I don't know what that means. Kind of vague.
Well, and I guess probably we don't know until we hear something more definitively. I think that he was a heck of a player, great pass rusher. So I think LSU not having them, really any program not having that guy is big. It hurts you, right? Whatever the issue is, you hope it's obviously something, if it's personal or family related, you hope it's something that, you just kind of keep them in your hopes and, in your prayers and your thoughts and, hope that gets worked out. If it's academically related, you hope that gets, resolved as well. Just, whatever it is, you just hope the kid's doing okay. He was somebody who, was interested in Georgia there for a long time. We never gave him an offer. We were kind of all in for Lorenzo Carter, and I'm not saying it's all Lorenzo Carter's fault, but you look at the difference in terms of production for those two players. Arden Key's kind of really made the most of his opportunity at LSU. So hopefully he's not shooting himself in the foot, a la Isaiah Crowell or any other multitude of student athlete.
Yeah. That's funny. I didn't know. Hey, it's Charlie Weiss Jr. Anyway, he's joining the. I was just reading on there the Atlanta Falcons. He was supposed to work with Lane Kiffin at FAU, but he switched up and he's joining the Atlanta Falcons as as some type of coaching assistant. I don't know if I'd want to go work at Florida Atlantic. I guess, is that his son? They're calling him Charlie Weiss Jr. That's not Fat Boy.
I would guess that.
That's not Fat Boy, is it?
I would think so. I don't really know where.
Hey, Georgia needs to pick him up, man. Have him and Chaney on the sidelines. It'll be like every game hot dog eating contest. Who's going to win that?
That's true. It looks like Charlie Weiss Sr. might be looking for a job if he's not already.
Where's he at anyway, by the way? I know he got booted from Kansas. I don't know where he is.
Oh, I don't know where he is now. We can look that up.
He's pretty bad.
Yeah, terrible. Definitely one of those ones where I think Belichick kind of made him and Tom Brady.
Yeah. Summers. All right, my man. I think we're coming up on getting close to a little over an hour here. Anything you want to get off your chest? Any other thoughts?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah, so pretty good overview. Talked some Georgia, talked some good SEC. So I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, man, it should be good.
All right, man. Well, thanks for joining us again, and I hope everybody has a good weekend and a little early happy birthday to Sean.
Thanks, bud.
All right, man. All right, good night, America.